Welcome back to the High Podcast. My name is Ronald. I am the host of the High Podcast. And essentially, here's my co-host, Romain Benjamin. And yeah, we're pretty much going to be talking about some awesome stuff today in regards to how to get started into real estate investing and like how to save towards that. And pretty much go into our own personal experiences on how we went to get into the journey where we, got to the point where we got to our first property. But how's it going, Romain? How's it been?
It's going pretty well, man. I'm blessed. How about you?
Doing pretty good, man. Can't complain. Always, doing the most in regards to technology. So, as we spoke about earlier before this podcast,
Yeah.
but yeah. I see that you were also somewhere else differently from your regular, usual setup. So I think you were like you said Utah, right? Camping.
Yeah, I'm currently camping or what they call glamping.
Mm.
One of our great friends, she celebrating her birthday, so we're out here at a national park camping in this really nice cabin, or I don't even know if we can call it a cabin. It's like a tent with like heat and nice bathroom and all that good stuff. We just got back from hiking, uh, and my shoes are ruined, but it's really nice.
Oh man, nice. Yeah, that sounds nice, man. Shoot, I want to do some glamping stuff. I'm definitely into the camping scene. I never been glamping before, but definitely been camping. And yeah, glamping is probably sounds way better. But actually, this past week I actually came off of my anniversary with my wife. So we had like a week long anniversary. So that was definitely recharging. So that's why, like, probably for the last week, you probably didn't really hear nothing from me because I was just really, enjoying my wife and doing a remembrance and doing a lot of reconnection and recharging and sending our, continue to see if we're on that same path of what we need to be for our family and stuff. So that was really awesome.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so let's get it started. I know we don't got Travis. I know we don't got Keith on today, but I think we got enough people to, pretty much talk about our experiences. And yeah, we can just like head out because essentially what we want to get at is like how do you get to the what was like the initial thought process of buying your first property and what made you take the actions to get where you need to be to put down a down payment to get there, and what was like your kind of like struggles, and I'm going to discuss mine as well getting there. And so I was wondering if you want to go first or I can go first as well.
Yeah, I can start. So getting the first property, and I'm assuming you mean first real estate investment property, not just like first home that you're going to live in, or both.
I was wondering, did you actually live into a house first, or do you purchase a investment property first?
So the first property I ever purchased was our first home that we were going to live in. After living in an apartment, after being married for a few years, we saved up and bought and built a home. We were able the market was such that we was able to, and also the combination of the market and our credit score, we were able to put down just 5% down, I believe, or actually it might have been 3.5%, but it was a conventional loan, pretty decent rate. Yeah, so our first home was actually a property that we lived in. But if you want, I can go into, I guess, the first investment property.
Mm.
So,
Uh, Um, let's see. Before we get there, I was like, I kind of want to know exactly before we jump the gun on getting the first investment property. I wonder is like, because one of the things that when I first start, thinking about, saving for a property, like like what was that mindset before you like, all right, before the home, before I actually bought the house for myself, either for investment or for a house, what was like the steps to get there? And for me, I'll say like just starting off to get there, I needed to know I can, invest, right? I was actually in Orlando, Florida before I actually moved here in Texas. And pretty much I was doing a lot of like, different jobs and stuff. I actually was doing trucking before I actually doing software down doing full time now. And I saved a lot of money doing trucking compared to doing actually software on when I
Yeah.
first started off in software. Because like with trucking, I literally didn't have a physical place to be at. Like I can save all my money there, right?
Yeah.
And but like the crazy part is I wasn't thinking about real estate during that time. I wasn't thinking about it. So I just saved like, 75% of my money. The rest just went to food and travel and entertainment. And I was just like saving my money because ideally I was trying to figure out if I was going to do the software stuff full time because I was doing it on the side. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to use this little cushion money as a way to either use it and invest it for my own education. So I can, bring up my status up and bring up my, I don't know, bring me some kind of value that I can gain some more money so I can invest more. Yeah, yeah. So like I kind of want to like know like that kind of thing. Like do you had that kind of steps on
Yeah. Yeah.
investing?
So I can say there's been moments in my life where it almost feels like an epiphany where you realize you're able to do something that you have never done before. I would say the same thing happened when I realized that I could propose to my wife, that nothing else was holding me back. The same thing happened with the property, with the home. Um, so one thing that I didn't know that may be common knowledge to others, but it wasn't common to me, was that you can get pretty expensive homes with a very low down payment if you're able to afford the mortgage payment. One thing that helped me prepare was seeing that the rent that I was paying for the apartment that I was living in was comparable to a pretty sizable home, for the same amount of monthly payment. So then it didn't become what my monthly expenses would be or how they would change, because I actually was able to get more space in a home, um, than I had in an apartment for the same monthly payment. So without it being, the monthly expenses being a concern, the concern became how much money do I need to get into the house to begin with, which would be the down payment and the closing costs.
Mm,
Well, for my first home, I think it was a 3-2 with like 2,200 square feet in Indianapolis or near Indianapolis. That property, I think, brand new costed us about 198. So you could do the math, with like a 3.5% down payment, so two times that's
about
like
like
a
six
little bit
thousand,
over
seven.
8,000. Yeah, a little bit 8,000. Let's round it up to 10 if you include closing costs.
Mm,
You know, $10,000 to get your foot in the door. Now, $10,000 isn't a little bit of money by any means, right? But it became something that looked a lot less scary than, you see these houses on the market for 200 to $400,000. It makes you, for someone who's never bought a house before, it seems very intimidating, and it was that way for me as well. So for those who are interested in getting their first property that are prepared to live in it, that's something that, I would like you to consider is, okay, does my credit score and my debt to income ratio, which the bank would use to determine how much they would lend to you, does that allow for me to have a low down payment that would help me get my foot in the door on the property? The third thing that I would consider, besides getting your foot in the door and the change in monthly expenses compared to like renting, that was big for me, was, am I going to live in the home long enough to justify the hassle of buying a home?
mm,
So I remember hearing a rule of thumb: if you're going to be in a location for at least 5 years, then it's
mm.
worth buying a home.
Yeah.
I'm not sure all the science behind that, but the hassle of buying the home, getting your credit score pulled, for the mortgage, assuming you have a mortgage, the process of moving all of your stuff into the property, and then also giving the property time to appreciate. On average, I think that over the past 40 years, the average nationwide appreciation rate is like 4.4%. Generally, properties appreciate. You might see momentary ebbs and flows with the economy, but generally real estate appreciates because everyone needs a place to live and people are having more babies. You know, we're not
Mhm.
getting more land created, but people have more babies. Um, and then another thing about being in a property for at least 5 years is if your property does increase in value sizably, if you live in that property for at least 2 years, you can sell that property without it being subject to capital gains tax,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is an above and beyond the tax you would have to pay just for your regular income. My wife and I were able to benefit by living in that property that I just mentioned for I think 6 years. And when we sold it, it was worth I think we sold it for 305.
Nice.
So in about 5 or 6 years, the property increased in value by 50%.
Yeah. Which is crazy. This is like so yeah, and that sells because you stayed in that property for like 5 years and the minimum of 2 years. The whole IRS tax write-off if you're married. I have to see the numbers, but essentially is from what I remember last time, it's like if you're an individual, you can write off 250K of the capital gains tax. So if had 100,000, that essentially gets wiped off, no tax when you own the sale of that property. And
Exactly.
when you're married, it's 500K. So that's like double. So it's crazy.
Mm. Yeah.
That, hopefully they never get rid of that because that's a cheat code for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. For people at our level, yeah.
Mhm.
The people at the Donald Trump levels and all that, that's like pennies to them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you talked about expenses, like, and it kind of like goes into what I want to lead into is like really get a handle on your expenses, and because that was one of the biggest parts for me is like I had to get like a budget, understand like where's my money going, where's my money coming in. I know I had like probably one or two income sources at one point, and I wanted to keep track of that. So like, is my expenses like over succeed in my income where I'm not actually saving anything towards anything, or
Mm,
is my expenses under where I actually have a net positive where I can put this money towards something that I can use for something later on. And
mm,
I think that's really a very important thing to understand when you first saving for anything or starting to invest. You got to understand and keep your spending and stuff down so you can have something on the side to put aside. And almost I treat it like this. I automatically take that stuff out of my check. So I don't miss it. It's automatically taken out. And
yeah.
I just have to deal with the rest. Like, hey, if I'm under, it's like, yo, I need to do something about making sure I can work with where I'm working with for the rest of the month.
Mm.
So yeah.
That's
So
that's definitely a good strategy. Thus, making it automatic so that you don't have to worry about it makes it easier for it to be consistent. So yeah.
yeah,
Um,
consistency is the most important part.
yeah, consistency is good, especially when you're in a relationship or have children like I do. You want it to be something that's easier for your teammate to adjust to and strengthen the relationship instead of it being a source of conflict.
Mm,
I can say that my wife and I, one of our first, I guess, stints of practice with financial decisions and practicing making decisions for our future was student loans.
mm,
So in the same vein that you said with saving for real estate, we had to say, okay, how much money is coming in? How much is coming out that we have to spend to live? Are we keeping track of what that net is, our net income? And then what are we going to do with that? Are we going to go on an extra vacation? Are we going to go to the movies a little bit more? Or are we going to save to pay off those student loans faster than we needed to?
mm,
And to God be the glory, we eventually got out of our student loan debt. So then the question became, what are we going to do with the net now? And after some consideration of different business ventures, we landed with real estate investing. Um, so we too have an automatic deduction, which what we call it our pay yourself, to
mm,
quote a term from the book The Richest Man in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
He equated the money you pay yourself to slaves because he said when you have slaves, those slaves make more slaves and they make more slaves and they make more slaves. So that if you have enough slaves that are in your camp, so to speak, you don't have to worry about if a robber comes and steals all the money in your bank account, or in to quote the book, to steal money from your purse. So it actually allowed that ruler to be more generous because he knew his monthly expenses were covered by, in his case, his assets or his slaves.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, real estate or any other business, you want to structure it that, like your pay yourself is purchasing assets to refill your purse. You don't have to be worried about the day-to-day expenses that you have. And to me, that's what I would call financial freedom, where you don't, where your assets are replenishing your expenses each month.
Oh yeah. And so I would say, you know what kind of guy I am. I would definitely hop from thing to thing. Like I'm very spontaneous in that kind of sense. Like you never know where I'm going to be at the end of the day. This is probably the most stationary I ever been in probably like let's see 3 years. Yeah, it's been 3 years. I've been pretty stationary or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe four, because since I started doing software, I've been the most stationary I ever been in my whole entire life. So yeah, so I'm a person who will, do a different types of businesses to earn some extra income on the side. I've been like that since I was like very young. So, selling candy, selling, burn mixtapes, selling, bootleg movies and stuff like that. Well, actually, probably not bootleg movies.
You want to go on record for saying that?
No, no, no. It was that. I didn't say that. That wasn't me.
Oh, okay. All right.
It
That
was
was the
it,
other
it was
Ron. The
the
other
it
Ron
was
did that.
yeah, it was the line wire stuff like during that time. Yeah, where people got viruses and stuff on our computer. Yeah, that was me. So yeah, yeah, learning like the different ways to hustle, right? So I never really believed in one source of income. I never thought that was like something sustainable for me. So like even to this day, I'm still, working on multiple streams of income. I might have like little small ones there that are trickling little by little, but that's how I look at it. So I'm working on like little things that will continue to bring more income to my things to overcome those expenses.
Yeah.
So and that's why I want, to do real estate because just in the sense of if I can park my money somewhere that I can just hold it there, just like you said, like, you putting your money somewhere that you don't have to worry about if you if you're sitting around or something like that, something happened, this money is still working for you.
Yeah.
And everything that I look at is like, if I'm putting money to something, it's going to be working for me and it's going to continue to work for me and give me a return on my investment, either from the equipment that I use or the things that I buy and purchase for investments. And there's pretty much like two solid things that I think is fundamental for any kind of financial freedom, which is, stocks and real estate. Those are the two things that are just fundamentally just gonna be substantial for long-term investing.
Mm-hmm.
And anything extra like business and stuff, if I can do that, then I add money to that. But other than that, those are the two things that I try to put into. But you did talk about something that I want to bring up and bring back to, which is it was a story that someone told me when I was in college, and it was actually, you might know him, Avery, right? You know Avery,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It kept on replaying in my head that he said his father, whenever he moved to a different location, he would purchase a house if he stayed there for more than 5 years, or even actually it was like 2 years or something like that. He was like, if I wherever I move to, if I stay there for more than 2 years, I'm purchasing a house. No doubt about it. He's making that purchase, and you kind of like rekindle that thought, and I wanted to share that story, and I can see the benefits behind that, and it depends on like where the market is sometimes. But maybe it doesn't really depend on where the market is, because what happens is that rents typically, go up steadily over time. If you lock in a certain mortgage payment, it's going to catch up at one point, and the rent is just going to get, bypassing the difference between your mortgage payment and the rent that is currently in the market. When you want to put that property on the market, it might have a surplus and you have cash flow, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of like look at it now. It's like, I've been here in this property for almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years in August, and the rent has gone up in this area. Mortgages, interest rates and all that stuff has gone up substantially. Getting a mortgage now and trying to cash flow in this particular area, it might not look good unless you do some kind of creative financing. You get someone was subject to, and you assume their mortgage based off of that.
Yeah. So I would stress that the examples that we're talking about is specific to buy and holds.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't say across the board that buying a property, if you're going to be somewhere, X number of years is a good idea. But I would say things to consider would be your risk tolerance and also how much liquid cash you have to accommodate a net negative cash flow. So if you read the book Hold, if you read, uh, you know, there's many real estate and professionals that would say cash is king. So they would point to cash flow, net and positive is the best way of ensuring that you're going to have a profitable investment.
Mhm.
However, if today's market, like you said, does not allow for you to have the net positive, after you subtract your operating expenses and your mortgage and your tax insurance and all that from your rent, if you have a net negative, if your analysis of when you project the rent to increase past what you spend on that investment, or if you anticipate that the payoff of that mortgage will eventually make the return on investment to your liking, then you can make that educated decision for yourself on whether or not you're willing to still buy a property, knowing that the initial balance sheet will show a negative return. Um,
Mhm.
but for people like myself who um, primarily focuses on cash flow, and as a refresher from previous conversations with buy and holds, there's three main ways to get a financial benefit from buy and hold. So there's cash flow, which is the net income if it's positive, um, operating expenses minus from what you actually make typically in rental income. There's the appreciation, which most investors that I talk to consider that icing on the cake, but there are people who their main strategy is the value of a property going up, especially if it's in a hotly contested area. And then three is the payoff of the debt, which usually people consider the rent that the tenant is paying as the way of paying off the debt. But the investor, if they chose, could pay off the debt sooner if they wanted to. But all three of those methods in concert are the factors that someone can consider before they decide to make their purchase on that first property or the however many properties down that they're on. And that's just for buy and holds. And we haven't even talked about flips and wholesaling and all of that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so again, on the topic of saving for your first investment property,
Mhm.
I mentioned in a previous episode hard money lenders. So as a quick refresher, hard money lenders are similar to banks, except they have more tolerance for dilapidated assets. A bank typically chooses the property to be the security of a mortgage. Well, if you're trying to flip a property, that property probably needs a lot of work in order for it to reach its market value or ARV, after repair value. So a hard money lender will charge you a higher interest rate generally than a bank, but then they would also allow you to um, to take on higher risk projects where they will say we'll secure, we'll use the dilapidated asset as a security, but we won't even allow you to take this loan from us unless we qualify your project by saying, hey, we're going to do an appraisal and see if your appraisal with the work you plan to do will make the property worth what you say it's going to be worth. In the context of saving for your first or second or third, however many investment properties, hard money lenders are a great way to start with low money because typically they'll have a very low cost to play financially. So in my experience, I did a flip where in order to do the flip, the hard money lender only made me have to pay 10% of the entire project. So the cost to buy the property, the cost to repair it together, all that together, I only had to pay 10%. Their loan covered 90%.
Okay. I actually have a quick question. So let's just
Yeah.
say the property right now is valued at like by 50,000. And then after the cost of repairs and stuff like that, um, the cost of repairs plus the value of the property, it'll come up to like 100,000, right? So would I just want to pay 10,000, like 10% of the whole entire work, and then it evaluates at like 150 after repairs? Like that's essentially how the flip and fix and the hard money works.
So let me make sure I understood. So you're saying if the price of the property as is 50K, it costs another 50K to fix it up,
Mhm.
but then its value in the market after it's fixed up is 150K. To do that project, you only have to pay 10,000. Is that the
Exactly.
question?
Yep.
So yes, in that
Nice.
scenario, you would pay 10,000 to get started. You would thank God that the after repair value is more than what you paid to acquire it, and you would sell the property. And in that transaction, typically, uh, the closing statement would have a debit that goes to the hard money lender because they're going to get their money. The debit will be the 50 or the $90,000 that you owe them because they're giving you a 90K loan.
Nice.
So you sell the property for 150, 90K comes out of it. So you get 60K from the sell, approximately. There's some other costs that we haven't talked about, but you get 60K from the sell. You went 10K in to begin with, so you net 50K.
Hmm.
So you've basically made five times, you've multiplied your 10K by five.
Yo, that's crazy. That's like 500% return.
Yes. Now, some other costs that we didn't talk about that are relatively minor if you're strategic would be that higher interest rate on the hard money loan,
Mhm.
making sure that you're not holding on to the property forever because every month you hold on to the property is going to multiply that loan that you owe by that higher interest rate. And then you're going to be, divided by 12, obviously, if it's a month, if it's an annual interest rate, you're
Yeah.
going to be paying that. And then there's going to be closing costs on the transaction. Sometimes hard money lenders charge you for every time you pull money out from the loan because they don't give you the loan as a lump sum. Sometimes they make you fill out, you actually complete some of the work, and then you show them the work was completed, and then you pay like a fee to get some of the money. So
Yeah.
there's some little minor costs, but minor costs, and you multiplied your money by 4.3 instead of 5, it's still a
Mhm.
wonderful return.
Yeah. And another thing to keep in mind too, I think is because with a flip and fix and much shorter term, the capital gain taxes like hit more, right? So even though you probably like 5x your money or something like that, then you have to take into account of like 20% of that tax gain is going to be taxed, right? You got to send to
Yeah.
the IRS.
And that is part of the reason why investors typically have a high threshold before they even consider entertaining a flip.
Mm-hmm.
I've, for myself, if I'm not expecting a net of 30K, then I'm probably not even going to waste my time because the unexpected things happen. I want to have a buffer for the unexpected. Um, and like you said, there's going to be tax on it. So if it's not looking like a solid 30K delta, then it's probably not even worth the risk for me. But
Yeah.
other investors may have more risk tolerance.
And so getting back to like pretty much the overarching topic of this podcast episode. So like what makes you feel like, well, we already know when you're feeling like ready for a house, somewhere we talked about that. But what makes you feel like you are ready to put your hardworking money and you have enough money to do like a fix and flip? Like what makes it where, hey, I have this cash reserve that we're set for like an emergency fund. Don't touch this. But now this is a set of money that I can use for a fix and flip. I have like, a good 10K. I use it fix and flip and I can 5X that if I, invest in a certain amount of range for the initial cost and the repair cost to get the after repair value where I can make that difference for my money and stuff like that. Like what
Yeah,
makes
so
you
that's all part of the analysis. So I would say no matter what property you're looking at, if the numbers look right, then you go for it. If the numbers look right as a flip, go for it. If they look right as a buy and hold, go for it. If they look good as a wholesale, go for it. Um, and sometimes a property might look great as a flip and not look good as a buy and hold, or vice versa. And if you have the time and the mental capacity to manage it, right? Flips typically take a lot more oversight than a buy and hold.
Mhm.
Flips, in my experience, require multiple trips to the property to answer questions that I didn't expect I would have to answer. Like, hey, we found that this bathroom actually isn't hooked up to the main water line. What do you want to do with it? You want to dig up this concrete, which is going to cost more than you originally budgeted, or do you want to white box it? I didn't think about that before. Now I got to make a hard decision. Oh, by the way, we didn't add the roof to the garage in the initial estimate. What do you want to do? Where are we going to cut costs so that we can meet the budget? Well, I didn't want to have to cut costs because we had already made the minimum quality stuff, right?
Yeah.
So fix and flips have a little bit more involvement. So if you're someone who likes to get in there and have a lot of control, then that would be something that I think would help you decide to go with that. But for every one of those options, it comes down to the bare numbers. Uh, and there's different ways to analyze that we could probably get into more detail in another conversation.
I think the question I had, let me see. So now you just, explained the whole thing. So like my worries of a fix and flip, because like I have my emergency fund. I don't want to touch it. I already invested my $10,000 initially. Like that's all set to put into it. And pretty much it's like almost like from me, I used to do some trading stuff, right? So I used to do day trading. And how I mitigate my risk is by spreading out my money and do a certain percentage of a trade. So like I won't spend more than 5% of my cash reserves to a trade to do a really quick jump up and sell it at a certain price point because I set my stop limit at a certain price point or my upper
Yeah.
limit at a price point, and then it'll cut off automatically because I used to do some stuff where it's set up for the upper limit and the top limit, and that was like me mitigating my risk of if it continue to go down, I won't lose more than a certain percentage.
Okay.
So
I think I get what you're getting at. So
yeah.
I think the question is, what does Romaine recommend in order to know when a flip is worth pursuing
Hmm.
financially? So you don't want to touch your emergency savings. You don't want to touch the bread on the table. You still want to go see Creed 3 at the movie theater, but you want to do this flip. So you want to
Yeah.
know how do you get started?
Yeah, because you got all the experience, man. You like, I mean, I wanted to do it, but I was like, dang, like it can go south sometimes, but I don't know when it will
Yeah.
go south.
Yeah. So I can tell you that flips are risky, but there's many ways to mitigate the risk, right? Any business venture has risk, and but there's ways to mitigate it. And I'll tell you what I recommend for flips. So I go into the mindset of if you want to do a flip, say to yourself, okay, the price to purchase the property and the price to fix it up, then multiply the price to fix it up by 1.3.
Oh
Add
yeah,
like a
you did.
30, add a 30% buffer to that thing.
Yeah, you
Because
did tell me
things,
this.
unexpected things will happen. If you're wrong, guess what? You got 30% more money than you thought. But put that one, multiply the cost to fix it by 1.3. If the if you look at the comps for that property, not the comps of a dilapidated unit, but the fixed up, nice shiny penny on the block, do a mile radius past 6 months, all the stuff to make your comps as accurate as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that and you see your ARV after you've already put a buffer on the fix, you already got the price to buy it. You could put in closing costs if you want to be more accurate.
Mm.
And you see that there's at least a 30K delta between the price to buy it, fix it up with the buffer, and the price to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's at least a 30K buffer there, then I would say you have a high likelihood of success. Not
Snap.
guaranteed, but a high likelihood.
Yeah. So yeah, you did tell me this, man. But it's like now it's getting me more excited to do fix and flips. Like it's getting me really excited because there's so many things I've seen, and I like to build stuff myself. Like I'm building like cabinets and stuff for my house, and building like little garage shelves and all that stuff. You've probably seen like a YouTube video that I did that little garage shelf, but I'm also building a little cabinet right now to just get playing around with like the woodwork stuff. Like I like to get my hands dirty for the most part, and I can pretty much fix anything. Like YouTube is out there, YouTube University, and like if I don't get it right the first time, then I'm for sure gonna get it right the 100th time probably, because I
Mm-hmm.
will keep on trying until I get it right. Like for example, I did my shower in this house. I didn't want to take the initial value of what they wanted to put in here because it was just going to be, very standard. So I was like, yo, I'd rather spend the extra $800 or $600 to put in a frameless like shower that looks great. And it looks great, fantastic. Probably messed up twice. At most, I messed up twice. And it was mostly like drilling inside the
So
shower
don't do
wall.
work on my house. That's what you just told me, that you're not qualified to put that in my house. But
All right.
continue.
So look at this, because what happens when you put any kind of shower door, because like you're gonna have to, take out a shower door if you want to put a new one in there, you're gonna have to drill holes in the wall anyway. And that's essentially what I did. Is like these shower holes, the two holes that I put in there initially, they were just like adjustments, trial and error, because it wasn't my fault on how they put the bedpan, because the bedpan is like at a slight angle. So like it goes upwards from the center, and the shower door, was scraping against that, right? As it goes towards the wall. So my fix was to, put it up slightly. Didn't get it the first time, put it down a little slightly, and then it was perfect. But
Yeah.
plug those holes. Those is not going to be a big issue. They got all the stuff in the back to make sure it's not, mold proof. But put caulking, put the was it the stuff that you put in for the towel to hold it. Put that on there, and you good. And you pretty much don't see it because it's hiding behind the little fixtures for the shower stuff already. Anyway, I just put that for aesthetic reasons if someone pull it up again.
So you just hit on a couple of things. One, why things go outside of budget or more than what you expected. And two, the benefit of doing things yourself, because then you learn what you're paying for if you pay someone else to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or you save money because you do it yourself. I do want to give a caveat for the advice that I gave earlier. Those numbers that I used, the buffer and the delta between sell price and your cost to buy it, that's with a price point that's pretty low. When I say low, I mean maybe less than 200K, less than 250K price point. Those numbers would not make sense if you're in the multi-million dollar property range, right?
Yeah.
So the investor would have to be considerate of like what could go wrong and how much would that cost, and then change their buffers and change their deltas accordingly. if we were talking with multi-million dollar projects, a 30K buffer doesn't probably isn't going to make a break whether or not it's worth it. A
Mm.
buffer of like 500K, 600K may change that decision. So it is something you have to be considerate. Currently, my price point is what I'm used to. I'm not into the multi-million dollar stuff yet, so that I wanted to give that caveat, so I don't misguide anyone.
No, that's
Um,
good because
yeah,
that's a good segue to like how you mitigating your risk. Like you're sticking to your price point. You know this is something that works. Stick to what's work, and then you're gonna level yourself up as you're getting the bankrolls into where you need to go to next, right?
and flips aren't my bread and butter. Buy and holds are, but one thing about flips is if the problem is so big, you can always bail, right? So if your price point is low enough and you have something go wrong that's like a huge percentage of what you expected the entire statement of work to be, then you can just say, okay, I'm going to sell the house to another investor who's willing to pay that, because other investors, there's always bigger fish out there who will be willing to handle more than what you're willing to handle. So you don't have to like, force yourself to eat the frog if you don't want to. Um,
No, that's fantastic because yeah, like I definitely seen this in this today's market. People are selling houses under finished, like as if they are worth like a certain amount of price range. But like probably like 2 years ago or a year ago, before things were start getting jacked up, those same houses probably go like half that price. So that I was like, yeah, I literally saw a house that had no drywall on it, still had the wirings and stuff like out, but they were selling it for like 300K. And I was like, what? This thing's not even finished. And it's not even a good area. And it's steadily going down. No one's buying it unless someone just wants to do some type of project while they stay there for like the next 5 to 6 years or something like that. They want to put the
yeah,
drywall themselves, put up they know the electricity stuff. And for the most part, I can do drywall. I can do showers now. I can do I can do painting. I'm pretty good at painting. Um, but electricity stuff, I probably definitely hire that out. I was about to say, I do have a question. So, like, was it the sale of your first property that made you want to get into the buy and hold, or was it the cash that you were receiving from your fix and flip that got into your first buy and hold deal?
it's funny. It was actually neither.
What?
So when my wife and I decided to purchase the first investment property, our goal was to make it a burr. We wanted to keep it and rent it. But a hard lesson that we learned is that we had a very charismatic realtor who did not use data to make decisions. So he, regardless of what the comp said, he believed in his heart he could sell it for a high ARV, higher than what the comps predicted. Well, the comps won. We were not able to sell it. We had to sell it for about 40,000 less than what he thought we could sell it for. And that
Oh,
was after multiple months on the market.
wow.
So with it being a hard money lending project, every month we had on a product on the market, we lost about $1,000 in holding costs because of the high ARV,
Yeah.
and we didn't get the ARV that we were hoping based on the charisma and the gut or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so that one we wanted to be in buy hold. It just wasn't a good one. It was going to cash flow negative because the leasing comps was not going to net positive.
Hmm.
We had our first buy and holds before we sold our first primary home. Um, the sale of our primary home just was just a huge blessing just in by itself, standalone. I would say that some of that money may have contributed to our next property. Uh, some of it contributed to us getting our next primary home. Some of it contributed to us getting some pizza. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
But
pizza's good, really good.
yeah,
Love pizza.
yeah.
Yep.
So, so yeah, that's the answer to that question.
Mhm. Cool, cool. Awesome. Yeah. And for me, either is gonna be a combination of things like for my first buy and hold. Like, yeah, I don't see it right away. I'm probably gonna move into one more place before I do another buy and hold, before I do a buy and hold deal.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna, do the live and flip, then rent this place out because I don't want to sell it. I'm probably never gonna sell any of the places that I live in, but it depends. It has to meet some certain kind of standards for me to sell it. Um, but I would say this, yeah, I'm gonna live in another place, and based off of what I can bring in extra, then I would determine whether or not I'm gonna do a buy and hold. Just directly do the whole 20% down and get into that. So whenever I get my money up to get up to that point, that's what I'm gonna do. Or I mean,
Mm.
I can still do it. I just have to look into markets and price points that I can get into at 20%. So I can still do it. I just gotta find the right price point in the market that I can put my 20% in.
Yeah, and that's a huge barrier in today's mortgage rate climate.
Mhm.
I think we're looking at 8% rates now, if
Oh,
even at the highest credit score brackets. So yeah.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I know we're coming up on an hour. Let's see. Towards the end of every single high podcast, we're gonna, share where our goals for the next podcast before going to the next podcast, and just set goals because this is all about setting goals. At the end of the day, setting goals on how we're accomplishing our investment and our real estate investment endeavors. So, yeah, what is your goals for next month?
My goals for the next month is not let the uh the people's concerns for today's market stop me from being optimistic about uh there being opportunities out there. So keeping my mind open. As far as I guess what we talk about next, something that just came to my spirit was perhaps talking about and addressing some fears people may have, you know, uh, when they think real estate, what things are paralyzing to them and how we can help address those.
Was definitely. And from my previous goal, I kind of found a deal to do the whole creative financing because I mentioned that last time, but I don't think they're ready for that particular discussion yet. So, um, yeah, I'm still I'm still playing with that creative financing piece where I'm helping someone out actually, and pretty much assuming their loan, and but they'll pay like the mortgage and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be very interesting. So still playing around with that. But for a goal for next time, I'm gonna, spruce up the podcast, start sharing it out there to others. Usually I wait until I get like 5 videos on the channel before I share out any of the content. But I'm gonna spruce up this podcast, do the thumbnails, do the marketing and stuff, and push it out there so I can, share this information with the people.
Nice,
So
nice.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna be working on for next month. But I do appreciate you coming through, Romaine, my co-host. Hopefully Travis and Keith can come back into this again in the discussion. Love the discussion on like how to save for your, first buy and hold. Love the discussion of fix and flip and get into that first thing and how we actually went about going about doing that. So this is really awesome and insightful podcast, and I definitely got a lot out of it, especially from the fix and flip piece. So thank you so much for coming through, and hopefully you guys have a great day.
You too. Good night.
Enjoy your camping.
Thank you.
Yep. Have fun.
All right. Bye.
Tell the kids I say hi and all that stuff. Peace.
All right. You too.
All
All
right.
right.